Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on bringing sense from sensor chaos to data clarity. My name is Kieran Kerk. I'm the Operations Director with IOT and DataBuilders. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just a quick housekeeping. If you need to ask any questions, there's a Q&A panel where you can actually pick questions up, and I'll try and pick them up at the end when we get through. This webinar should take up to about 40 minutes, I think, so it shouldn't take too long. I hope everybody is enjoying the slightly improved weather. Okay, so we'll get up and running. Right, IMGS and DataBuilders, we build simple solutions for complex data challenges, and we've been in business for over 20 years doing that. Our customers, we have a wide range of customers across the island of Ireland. In utilities and energy, we have Gas Networks Ireland, ESB, NIE, fibre customers, transport, government, engineering, and yeah, hundreds and hundreds more. So we have a wide range of customers using all sorts of our technology. Oops. And so what we're talking today is about the use of sensors. So sensors in facilities management is becoming more and more prevalent. So more and more buildings are becoming smart buildings. So using sensors to do all sorts of things, from energy management, to monitoring the environment, kind of air quality levels or whatever, to doing predictive maintenance, knowing if assets are going to break or are going to get damaged. Also tracking security and access control, looking for leaks, looking for waste management, and then space utilization, which is becoming more and more prevalent. People want to make sure they're making the most of their investment in buildings and in the return in that office space. So when you are using with sensor data, there are certain challenges. Big area, of course, is security and privacy, making sure that that data and anything it's reporting on is anonymized, isn't breaching anybody's data rights. But also the biggest thing that we've seen with sensor data is just the volume and the velocity of information that it generates. Because I've been working in the last couple of years with a number of customers on sensor projects. Usually when you're looking at sensors, you might be looking at a ping from the sensor or a reading from the sensor every 10 minutes. And if you're looking at buildings or properties with maybe multiple rooms, multiple floors, multiple properties, you're then talking about thousands and thousands of records of data being generated every minute, every hour. And then when you're trying to turn that into information that you can generate insights, it hugely expands. So the volume of data is huge, but also the velocity, it's coming in every few minutes. Sometimes also you have to build in data quality. Sometimes the sensors or the IoT devices themselves can fail, that they can have an issue. And you also want to make sure they're being reliable. So if a sensor is failing, can you automatically restart it automatically without having to actually manually go out and do it? And then sensor information is like any big data. It generates huge information, but is that a good thing? Can you make decisions based on that data? Can you take the swamp of information that's coming from the sensor and actually generate insights and reports out of it? Also, not every sensor follows the same protocol. So building having a platform that can support different sensors, different protocols, and different messaging options is really important. And then once these things kick off, they have to be able to scale, and your data management costs can become huge when you start storing this data. How long do you store? Again, I've worked with customers where we've had to optimize the model to be able to store for, say, 6 months of historic data, or a year or 2 years, or can you aggregate the data so that you can store for a longer period? These are the questions and the challenges that you would be met with when you start using more and more sensor information. So the solution we're going to talk about today, in it, we have 3 main components. So a lot of you on the call will be FME customers. So FME allows you to integrate and standardize your data. So FME can connect to your IoT devices or your sensor devices through various protocols, whether that's the directly in, or using gateways or protocols like you have on Azure or AWS, or actually just connecting straight in through HTTP or messaging or whatever. FME can get to that data, bring it in, and put it into your landing database. And again, as I've been working on these projects, I have found Amazon RDS, and particularly the PostgreSQL database, is a very easy to set up, very cost-effective database that you can spin up in minutes to store and land your sensor information, so that then you can enhance it and remodel it to be ready for analytics and reporting. And then once this process is in place, you can then use FME to automate and reuse all your data and make sure it's used in other areas of the business as well. So with FME, for those who are new on the call to FME is a no-code enterprise data integration platform. And when it comes to sensors, it supports a wide variety of sensor formats and protocols, such as JSON, XML, MQTT, as I mentioned, HTTP, REST, and other gateways such as AWS, Azure, and IBM. So the common use cases for FME is integrating that data and standardizing it, pulling it from the sensor, getting it to your database, which I'm going to show you a very simple demo of today. But once you have the information, then you can use FME and a lot of old school things, parsing the data up, encoding it, and doing quality control to make sure you're putting in good information. You can handle how that information is coming through, whether it's batch, on schedule, or streaming, and I'll talk about streaming today. And from there, FME can also be used to do alerting and automation from the sensor. So it could be an alert to be saying that if a sensor is failing, to proactively alert user and send a message or an email or a Teams message or whatever to an administrator to say, sensor X in building Y is failing. We actually did some work with one organization who were very heavily looking at data centers, and we were able to do with the FME call, if the sensor failed, was to send it a restart call through the MQTT interface, and we're actually able to automatically restart the sensor using that call. And it mightn't always fix it, but as you know, in IT, sometimes rebooting is enough. So we were able to do that through the FME interface. Now, as I mentioned already, we've been doing a lot of work with Amazon RDS, which is their relational database in the cloud. It's so simple. It is so easy to stand up a RDS database, and you can pick your options, PostgreSQL, Oracle, or whatever, or MySQL or SQL Server. But I find the PostgreSQL version is just excellent. It's one of the cheapest options. You can, if you're developing your platform, you can actually use the free tier for that initial development. Otherwise, you can actually use, it can scale up and scale up very cost effectively. So very easy to manage. Amazon look after all the backups, all the security for you. You just have to stand up the database, create your schema, and then using something like FME, we can pull that data in. Or we could do it through the gateways, the Amazon gateways or other gateways that are provided for your IoT provider. So with RDS, it provides that centralized storage for data. We can then use that data to drive the dashboards and analytics to create the insights. Can easily be automated, and again, it's a very cheap option for historically storing your legacy information, so that you can do forecasting and use it for AI or whatever you're trying to do with that information. And then once we actually have our Sisense, our data in the data warehouse, we can then use Sisense to build out your application. So if you're a facilities manager and you want to embed Sisense into an application you're providing, either you're an application provider for facilities managers, you're a software provider building apps for facility managers, and you want to provide analytics in your software, or if you are a facilities manager and you just want to white label your analytics to look like your company brand, Sisense is the perfect product. So with Sisense, we can embed the analytics into existing applications. We can show advanced analytics and drill down. As I said, you can then do that historic reporting and use that for forecasting and predicting what's going to happen. And then we have the ability to use AI then for modeling and data exploration. So that's my slides. So first off, just want to jump into our little demo. So first thing what I've done is I'm sitting here on my computer. So how am I going to, first step is to show you how FME can connect to a sensor and pull data into the database. So to enable this for the demo today, I like doing live demos. What I've actually set up is a mock sensor on my PC using Node.js. So I'm able to hear, what you'll see is it's running under the MQTT protocol, and I have a simulator which is generating out my sensor pings here, so you can see them being generated. And then I have my server, which is receiving those pings coming in. And that's running under the MQTT protocol. So running away on my computer here, I have a pretend sensor which is generating temperature information all the time. So I want to get those messages from the MQT broker into my database. So what I actually have is a PostgreSQL database running in AWS in RDS, and because you can actually download Post PG admin, which is the Postgre admin interface, if you're a database guy, you can create tables in here, you can run your queries to see the information. So you can see here I've created a table and it's got the sensor information coming in from my FME workspace. So let me jump into my workspace here to show you. So what we have here is we have our FME workspace. Let me just escape this presentation deck for a second and go back to my FME. And what you'll see here is if you're doing streaming of data in FME, you would use a creator to kick off the process. So the creator transformer starts up the process and initiates that streaming process. First thing we have is the MQTT connector. So the MQTT connector allows us to connect FME to our little Node.js or MQT server here. So we want to connect and get this data that's coming here into our FME workspace. So very simple with FME. Again, it's a no-code solution. So in here, we're actually able to set up to the connector, set up the address. In this case, just for the demo for the day to make it simple, I'm running just 5 records in at this point, just to show you how it's done. So in there, I set that up. So that then connects to our FME, brings in the JSON data from the MQT, but of course JSON is in a string. So if you look at my information here that's coming in from the MQT connector, you will see that we have our payload here, which is bringing in device ID, the device is there, and the temperature, which is very like what we're seeing in the broker. So you can see here, these are the messages that are coming across, and that's what I'm getting in my payload here, okay? So now I have it in my payload, but that JSON is no real use to me to write into a database. So what I have in FME is my JSON flattener, which very simply, I pointed at my payload coming through, and I tell it to break it out into objects. So it's going to break those out into objects that I can then actually use as data. So if we see the output of that, you can now see, sorry, not coming up. You can now see that the information is starting to come through. And as I output here, we now have our device ID and temperature as separate columns. So we've actually split that out. We've used the attribute exposer to expose those as 2 attributes so that we can now take the device and the temperature from my sensor, and now I can able to write that to my database. So I do a little bit of cleanup with my attribute manager to make the fields nice, to remove any fields I don't want to write to the database, because really all I'm interested in is the message ID, the device, and the temperature at this point. And I can push that out to my PostgreSQL database. So if I look at my settings here, you can see we have our reader. This is our connection into our PostgreSQL database, which is exposed up on the cloud, and it's just a case of setting that connection up, and I can write through. So I'm now able to run my workspace, hit run. It's going to connect to my database in the cloud, which is running PostgreSQL, and the data is then pushed through. You can see the connection, you can see our records, and then this is rolled out to our database, and we're now getting more records out here into our table. So with the database, we're actually, with FME, without programming, I haven't done a line of code, I'm able to connect to my IoT device. I'm able to set that up, pull the data, and write it to my database. Now, usually what would happen is to automate that process, we would then publish this workspace out and publish it out onto the cloud as a as my demo, and I would pick it as a streaming service. So I would set up a streaming service and I would pick the data streaming option and then publish to the server, and then it would constantly run on the server, pulling the data from the IoT device to my database. So then I'm building up that historic data and it's going in that structure, and then we will then be able to manipulate that data to turn it ready then in for insights, which is what I'll come on to in the second part of the demo where I show our analytics platform. For those of you who are using FME, one thing to bear in mind is when you use a streaming interface like this, it will lock up one engine of your FME because it's running 24/7. You're enabling that, the streaming service will run, the creator will start, and it just keeps going 24/7, moving the data from the broker, from the IoT device into your database, that then you can then use that data for your analytics, for your forecasting, for your predictive maintenance, whatever you need to use it for. Okay, but it does use an engine while the streaming service is running. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so that's showing us how with FME, we can connect the data from our IoT device. And like I've used MQTT here. As I said, there's a number of ways FME can pull in data from sensors and IoT devices. You could use HTTPS, you use web connections, API calls, web connections. There are a wide variety of options. We can use the gateways, if you are looking at AWS or Azure as your gateway, yes, we can connect to them as well. So lots of options to get that data from the sensor and bring it through and push it into your database. And then once in your database, you're able to explode it out. So next thing I just need to bring up here is my little Sisense system. So what I've done is built a dashboard here to actually look at our sensor data. So it looks very nice. You can see I've added a few other sensors into this information. So I have sensor that shows utilization. So is there somebody in the room? Sensor that picks up motion to detect someone being in the room. I've also got some booking data to know when rooms are being booked, and I've got the temperature of the room, which you've seen me generate the temperature sensor. So how do we turn that raw data we were getting from FME into the database, into that kind of hard table to analyze that you were seeing a second ago, and push it into something that we can generate dashboards like this? Well, actually what we have is in Sisense, I've done some data modeling on the information to turn it from being raw sensor information into actually an analytics warehouse. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I've done all this manipulation inside Sisense in what's called the Elastic Cube, which allows you to, without coding again, build out your own model and build out your own tables. This also could have been done with FME as another option. We could have done the transformation of the data using FME, or we could do it using SQL. There's three options really. But for the purpose of today's demo, I've actually just done it using Sisense because that's what I'm best at. My SQL isn't that strong. So what we'll see is we've got three source data sets. So we got the sensor data, and this information, this time series data, this is how you usually receive it when you have sensors pinging every few minutes. Now, I was lazy in my little demo set. I just picked every 30 minutes. But in most projects I've worked on, sensors ping every 10. Okay, so you can see all these columns of data. Think of a 24-hour series pinging every 10 minutes, and think of how many columns we're going to go across. So this is how the data comes in. You have your date, you have some information about, which floor it is, which device ID, whatever it is that you're bringing in. And then you have the ping each few minutes. So this is usually how data is processed up and given in. And the projects I've worked on, this is how we receive the data from different brokers or different web services in this kind of column basis. Data in those columns is not easy to analyze. Like if you're trying to figure out the average temperature over the day, how do you do that easily when you're running your analytics? Well, what we actually do is we remodel that data from being in that column to being pivoted back into a structure. So if you look at our sensor table here for temperature, what we actually have is, if we preview it, is we have a row for each time, and then we actually have some additional values to enhance the data. So instead of having loads of columns, we have the temperature, we have the time that's run at 10 o'clock, we have what device, what floor, how long this piece of information was for, it's 30 minutes in this case, and I've created a few extra fields. So I've got like, what is the classify the data? Is this a hot temperature, is it cold temperature, or is it just right? So doing that, we were able to make it easy then for the dashboard analyst to actually use the system. So by enhancing the data, by putting in these values, we are able to build in the rules to make this a more easy to report on system. Similarly, I did the same for our occupancy. So we've occupancy data, booking data, and devices. So if you look at the occupancy data, similar thing as well. In this case, we have the time, the minutes, but we've also got a very simple, is there someone in the room? Is it empty or is it being used? And again, from reports, that's a very quick thing for someone to go, okay, show me the total time that our rooms are being used. And similarly, on the booking side, I wanted to show how much of the room is actually being booked and how for long. And again, I have, is it booked? Yes, no. And I just have a nice text value, which makes it easier for the analyst in the dashboard to go, okay, count up all the time that's booked, count up all the time that's not booked. One of the projects I worked on is looking at lost revenue. A lot of building managers are looking at, well, okay, we bringing in rent money for renting out rooms, but actually how much money are we losing because rooms are being used and not booked, or worse, or used and not booked, which is a problem, and they're not paying for it, or not booked and not used, which is lost revenue totally. So they're sitting idle. So tracking that kind of information is really important. You want the analyst to be able to drill into the data very quickly and do that. And in Sisense, it's very easy just to add in these kind of clauses. So I just use a simple statement here, which is taking each column, unionizing the data, and I just do a simple query, if it's this, if the sensor is saying it's active, it's got a ping, then it's booked. If someone's booked it, in this case it's a booking, so it's not a sensor, it's actually a record. But in the sensor ones, if the value is coming back and it's active, then we're getting our value. And here we're doing for temperature. If it's less than 12 degrees, I'm saying it's cold. If it's between 12 and 20, it's ambient. And if it's over 20, it's hot. Okay, and you can change those values. So very quickly, we're able to take this raw sensor information and turn it into an analytics warehouse. Again, very easy, drag and drop in Sisense to build that model out. And that then enables me to create my dashboard. So in this dashboard, I'll just refresh it as it's been sitting here. You'll see the dashboard that we create. Now, this is just the data is all random generated. So don't mind if it's a little bit funny or a little bit strange. So what we see here is on room utilization, I said for the current date, where this is this month, March, we've had 485 used hours. Okay, so let's have a look at how we're doing that in our Sisense. So in here, we have a calculation, which is used hours, and it's total sensor minutes divided by 60. Actually, that is used hours. Yeah, so that does that calculation. Oh, yes, sorry, I knew. What I've done over here is a filter to say only pick up the data that's used. Okay, now if I turn that off, you'll see it's 967 hours in total. But actually, I'm only interested in the used hours. So that's showing room utilization, used hours 485. By using those flags, used, booked, makes it very easy for the analyst to start creating these dashboards, creating insights and delivering results. Similarly here, I got my total hours booked. And again, I'm looking at only slots that were booked, and I got my 493 hours. Over here in the temperature, I decided to figure out, I wanted to know, well, how many hours are ambient? Now, I could add a secondary value here if I want to on the fly. I could, in Sisense, it's very easy to, I'm going to take that total sensor hours, and I could put the other value in here and add another calculation and have a secondary value, which is the total all records or whatever, but I have my filter here for that. So you can put in other changes if you need. What we've also done with Sisense is you can actually make dashboards actionable, and you're bringing the end user on a journey. So if I want to be able to come in here and click on learn more about my used hours, using what's called the accordion function in Sisense, I can click on this button and get another dashboard loaded up inside my dashboard. So it's now showing my breakdown of used hours across the various buildings that we have. I've done similar for my bookings. So if I want to see where's the booked minutes and which building is getting most bookings, so you can see very clearly here that my key pointer is getting the most bookings each day. And finally, as well, with my dashboard, I'm able to break down, who's got the coldest minutes, and key point as well is very cold by looks things. Again, made up data. So we also can see we have our little chart here that's showing bookings versus utilization. Really big use case is, okay, how many have we booked? How much are we utilizing? So actually what we're seeing here is, and this wouldn't happen in reality, that the bookings are showing more than what's being utilized. Usually it's the other way around. In most cases, this is all random generated data, so there's no reading to it. But in reality, what I've found on the projects I've worked on, it's you have less bookings and more utilization, because what happens is people just walk into rooms and take them and don't book. But in this case, you can definitely see that there's people are blocking out rooms for no reason and then not using them, which again can happen as well. People decide, I want that meeting room. I don't want anyone else to get it, so I'm going to block book it out. Then nobody else, if it's a complex building, will then use the room. They'll think it's been used. They won't walk up to see it, but it turns out actually the rooms aren't being booked. So this also does indicate a potential issue as well. Now you'll notice there's a little bit of text here generated. This text is natural language that's auto-generated by Sisense. So in Sisense, all you do is you just turn on what's called narrative text, and it generates this nice bit of text which explains what's going on. So you can see here, key point has notably higher total booking and used hours compared to other buildings, which we can see, indicating greater utilization of demand. Dundrum exhibits less efficiency. Okay, so you can see what's happening in that chart. Similarly here with Sisense, we also have the ability drilling through, going on the journey. If I wanted to look at key point and I want to look at more information, well, I can right click here and I can go, okay, jump to my bookings information and give me a better view of what's happening. And then what you can see is, okay, at key point, I can see in floor 1, there's a 1590 available minutes. We're losing 800. And I had some maths to figure out what the cost of ownership is for those lost minutes. And you can actually see where we're losing the most time, where it's cost effective. And of course, once I'm in here, I can export that Excel out if I want to send it to the building manager or to people using the system and say, hold on, you guys need to keep an eye on what's going on. We're not getting enough bookings, or people are using the rooms without, being paying for them, whatever it is that you want to actually see. And also one thing you notice with the jump to dashboard, if I just close that 1 second, if I come in here and I use my filter, so if I just want to use Monday, I'll use Friday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And now I jump into my sensor bookings again. What you'll see is, because Sisense can pass through the filters automatically picked up and the data, and now we're not seeing Monday in our report. So if somebody is focusing in on information during their workflow, they can actually, it'll all pass through and they'll create their actually export. It's funny, I've been working with analytics now for about 5 years, 6 years with Sisense, and in all the projects I work on, and everybody gets these AI tools and they get these enhanced dashboards and very pretty widgets. It's amazing people just want to create a pivot or table output and then export the data. It's what happens, unfortunately, and yeah, we can do that here. We can do an export and we can download that data as a CSV or a PDF or whatever. But the one thing we found is these tables or pivot tables can be very heavy. So the better approach, instead of putting a big pivot table on your first dashboard, is to use something like the jump to dashboard as a jump in, and that people drill into the data and get what they need. And that gives a better user experience because these initial dashboards are very quick, very fast, but then when you need to drill in, we can drill down step by step. Similarly, here you can see I've done a different jump to dashboard for my temperature. So I can come down here and I can pick Tuesday or Wednesday here, and I can go jump to my drill, and it's going to open another dashboard. And in here, you'll see a breakdown hour by hour of the average temperature. So we can actually see it. And now you can see my natural language has generated some text to go along with that as well. And similarly, our filters, have passed through. It's picked Dundrum, it's picked Wednesday, and that's now what I'm seeing in my nice little chart. So it's a very good way to guide users through your story, tell them the story, the analytic, take them step by step. So if you are a facilities manager or an owner of buildings or owner of properties, being able to track your data, being able to understand what's been done, where you're losing money, where you're making money, where there's, quality of life issues or quality of work issues, this is where these kind of applications and things can come in. You can also see here, I can use any filters here on the side. So again, by having those nice fields that I put in, I'm able to say, okay, I only want to see days when the rooms were cold, what happened, and you can see people were dropping off and the room was cold and the hours dropped naturally because people weren't going to stay. So my utilization was dropping because room's cold, I walk out. I'm not going to stay in a cold room. And again, data here is made up. So in reality, this is what would happen. Cold room, you'd walk out the door. Okay, and so that then shows us what I've shown very quickly in this demo is how FME can connect to any sensor, really any IoT device, and load data into a database. From there, we can then use Sisense or other modeling tools to remodel that data into an analytics warehouse, and then to start building dashboards like this that we're creating here. So delivering real insight, really, really easy for end users then to take that time series data and make it meaningful and make decisions. And that's what our platform allows. So I'm pretty much keeping the time. So, not there, no, from this slide. New laptop. This is in the way. Get out of the way. Slideshow, and it's from current slide. There we go. Okay, and so I've talked about some of the projects we've worked on. One of the projects we're most proud of is our work with NHS Open Space. It provides access to clinical and non-clinical rooms in England from partners across the NHS. NHS use room sensors to capture the room usage. They actually are looking at other sensor data as well, like temperature, and then open space users can then get the room utilization. And the big thing is bookings versus utilization. And we were asked to build a data model to convert that raw sensor data to an analytic warehouse to deliver the kind of insights you're doing on the screen, and that's been embedded into their application and really successfully used. One thing today is I've shown you the stack with everything, from all using my favorite tools. But of course, actually, a lot of these things can be mixed and matched, whatever your poison is, whatever solutions you're using. So you may not want to use PostgreSQL RDS. So you might decide you want to use SQL Server or Azure. You might want to use a gateway protocol. Your dashboard, maybe you want to use Power BI, but you want us to ingest the data and build your data warehouse. Whatever combination you need, we can help you with. So if it's to build the data integration flow line, build the data warehouse, we can do that. Whatever data warehouse you want to use, we've worked with so many of them, we can help you there. And again, yeah, Sisense if you already have a BI, we can also help you work with your BI of choice. So whatever solution you need, we can help you deliver what needs to be done. So with DataBuilders, we can help you decrease development costs. We provide the RDS, I think, is fantastic. I really like it, the PostgreSQL. It's a low-cost data storage, very easy to maintain, low overhead. As you can see, if you build your data model correctly with some smarts, it can increase time to insight because the dashboard user can build their analytics very quickly. And that time series data, turning it into a analytics ready database is something we're very good at, and it's really important if you want to get a good return on investment for your IoT and sensor devices. And yeah, our platform will help you then reduce operational costs because you're then able to make better decisions about your building management, better decisions, where you're losing money or where you could gain money. Oh, wrong side. I do have a couple of other webinars coming up. The next one is on very similar kind of messaging, but if you're in the supply chain, you're looking at logistical data, you'll see in this webinar how we can use FME spatial tools to optimize network planning. And again, Sisense can then take advantage of that data to provide actionable insights. And that's on same time next month, 14th of April, 2 to 3, but I usually do about 40 minutes. So hopefully you can join me. And then the month after, similarly, and second Tuesday of the month, I'll be doing a little bit more in depth into Sisense, showing you how you can build software applications, but insights and analysis analytics into your software application using Sisense. So that session will be for product managers to see how you can easily embed Sisense into your software. Okay, and oh, sorry. And yeah, just like to say thank you for everybody coming today. I think I've kept pretty much the time, so I'm doing pretty okay. Hopefully you can come and join me next month. If you have any questions or would like to talk more about it, please feel free to email me. My email address is there, ckirk@imgs.ie. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to have a demo or talk more about what we've shown today. Okay, and I don't think there's any questions at the minute, but yeah, that's great. So thank you again for attending. Hope you have a good evening, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.